In this video, we're going to look at the mechanical process of factoring using decomposition. Now, as you become better, you tend to move away from decomposition because you start seeing little hints within the expression, and I suggest you look at some of the other videos where I explore some of these tricks, and always keep them in the back of your mind. Okay, so decomposition. The first thing to remember is that the general form of a quadratic expression is ax squared plus bx plus c. And when we go through the process of decomposition, we first need to identify two things. The first one is the product, and the product is defined as a times c. And the second one is the sum, and the sum is defined as the b term. So let's dive right into an example here. Example A. In this case, A is equal to 1, B is equal to 7, and C is equal to 12. Therefore, the product is 1 times 12, which is 12, and the sum is 7. So what I need to do is come up with two numbers whose product is 12 and whose sum is 7. And the two numbers would be 3 and 4. So the reason they call this decomposition is because we're decomposing the middle term to consist of those two numbers. So we end up with x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 12. Notice I've changed how this expression looks, but I have not changed the result if I substitute in a value for x. The next step is to look at the first two terms together and then the second two terms together. And what we want to do is find the largest common factor for the first two terms and the largest common factor for the second two terms. So in the first two terms, the largest common factor is x, so I factor that out to give me x plus 3. In the second two, the largest common factor is 4, and that's going to result in x plus 3. And this is what I call a feel-good moment, because this is a moment you can check to see if your work is correct. Because if it is, these two brackets should be equal. And that means you can factor that bracket out of each of these two terms. And now the two terms could be thought of as term 1, term 2. So what we end up with is x plus 3, and we factor that out, and the first term is left with just x, and the second term is left with 4. And now we have successfully factored the expression x squared plus 7x plus 12. Let's do this again, but a little quicker. In this case, I'm not going to write out a, b, and c. I'm just going to say the product is negative 15, because notice in this case, the c term is negative, and the sum is negative 2. So then two numbers that multiply to give me negative 15, but add to give me negative 2 are negative 5 and positive 3. So I decompose that middle term. So x squared minus 5x plus 3x minus 15. And now I will factor, the common factor in the first two terms is x. So I end up with x minus 5. The common factor in the second two terms is 3. So I end up with x minus 5. And then I have my feel-good moment here because both these binomials are the same. And then I factor out the binomials. So I end up with x minus 5 times x plus 3.